Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stressed Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hello peak performer, welcome back to the Stressed Podcast. While you are listening to today's podcast episode, I am traveling in Europe, visiting family and celebrating a really good friend's wedding in Austria. And I, of course, didn't want to leave you hanging, so I have prepared a couple of special podcast episodes for you today in order to help you better understand yourself, better understand your emotions, and better understand your stress levels. This video that I'm sharing with you today from my YouTube channel is a really important topic about how to regulate emotions. And this is something I hear when I talk to clients all the time. They have really heightened emotions when they're experiencing high levels of stress. They feel overwhelmed, exhausted, tired, anxious, stressed, busy, sad, right? All of these different emotions are actually absolutely normal when you are experiencing high levels of stress in your day-to-day. And so I want to explain to you today how that is connected. And obviously I want to give you a couple of different tools on how you can overcome that. So I'm super excited to share this YouTube video with you today. And as I'm coming back in September from my trip to Europe, I am really preparing for my busy season. Q4 is usually the busiest time of my business, where I am hosting a lot of different events, lots of different corporate workshops, and of course one-on-one coachings with my clients. So if you are interested to work with me, no matter if it is in a one-on-one coaching capacity or if you want to hire me for your company, for your team, in order to help them better understand how to overcome or avoid burnout and sustain performance over time, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. This is the perfect time to do this. I know that you might still look for a speaker for your team offsite, or you're looking to really help your team up-level themselves before the end of the year to go through the busy period that Q4 is. So don't hesitate to hire me and to talk to me and to really find a solution to what fits your needs the best. At the same time, I would also really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star review of my podcast on iTunes, because this really helps me and of course all of the listeners to find my topics and all of the content that I'm sharing more easily. So thank you so much already in advance for doing that. I know it only takes 5 minutes, but sometimes it's just that little extra step that we need to take. So thank you so much for doing that for me. That's really something super, super small you can do for a small business to help me grow. That is for free and only costs maybe 5 minutes of your time. So without further ado, I would say let's jump into today's podcast episode on how to regulate your emotions. How do you regulate emotions? Emotions and feelings are obviously part of our DNA. But how do you manage and regulate your emotions? Maybe you have been feeling particularly down lately, or you have been feeling very intense feelings, or maybe you have been feeling very frustrated and angry. So in today's video, I want to talk with you about what stress management actually has to do with emotion regulation and why you have to manage your stress levels in order to get a hold of your emotions. So I would say, let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm a peak performance coach and stress management trainer. And I'm super excited that you are watching this video today because I want to talk with you about a super interesting topic. The question today is, how do you regulate emotions? And it is super interesting and fascinating to understand how we are really regulating our emotions, because we are obviously experiencing and feeling emotions every single day. Emotions help us and guide us to make decisions. They help us, or maybe sometimes don't help us, to say certain things or do certain things. So it is really interesting and also really important to pay attention to your emotions and to also know how to regulate them. In order to understand all of these different things, we first of all need to talk about your brain. In your brain, there is a specific part called the amygdala. And the amygdala, which is an almond-shaped size part of your brain, is responsible for processing different kinds of threatening or fearful emotions. So that is super important. The amygdala is basically your stress center, or the part of your brain that is first of all triggered when stress is sensed in your environment or even internally, because that's the next thing that I'm going to talk with you about in a second here. But let's stay with the amygdala first of all. So the amygdala is basically your stress center. First of all, the amygdala is triggered, and then once this is happening, obviously your sympathetic nervous system is triggered. That is responsible for releasing different types of stress hormones, such as adrenaline and cortisol in your body. And then obviously we are in that stress state and we are feeling ready to fight, flight, or freeze. And this is something that our bodies and our systems created many years ago in order to protect us from any kind of danger. What is really important to note is that when you are in this stress state, you are obviously experiencing more heightened emotions, right? Because you are now moving basically from your rational brain into your more emotional brain. And when you are in that state, when you're more in that emotional brain, when you are sensing stress and when you think that there is stress happening in your environment or something is threatening you, then your body is paying even more closely attention to what is happening in your external world and usually also in your internal world. And when you are in that emotional brain, then you are experiencing more heightened emotions. You might feel more stressed, you might feel more frustrated, you might feel more aggressive or angry, or you might feel more sad or worried, right? So all of these different emotions are very natural when you are in the stress state, when you are in that emotional brain or in that emotional stress state. So that is the first important thing to understand, that stress and your emotions are basically interconnected with each other. You can't see that separately. Second of all, what is also super important to note is that your feelings and emotions impact your thinking and vice versa, right? Sometimes we have a thought and that thought might trigger certain emotions or feelings. Or sometimes we are having a feeling which might trigger a thought, and then that kind of becomes a cycle as well. And when you have negative thoughts, you can also trigger your stress response. So even thought alone can trigger your stress response, which is super important because oftentimes when we hear about stress, we think about the fight or flight response, and oftentimes in that sense, we think about maybe some really threatening situations, like for example, a saber-toothed tiger chasing you, right? Or a rhino or whatever, or a tiger. And that is really not the case, because by thought alone, you can trigger your stress response. So this is extremely important to note, because when you are basically having heavy emotions, when you're feeling really down or when you're feeling super intense, that can also trigger, on top of everything that's going on, your stress response. So you really want to make sure that you are managing your stress levels. That is why stress regulation actually comes before emotional regulation, because they are so interconnected that when you are starting to manage your stress levels and your stress levels decrease, you're going back into the rational brain. So hopefully at this point you understand that if you are experiencing high levels of stress, you most probably also experience very heightened levels of emotions, right? Anger, frustration, aggression, sadness, worry, etc., etc. So those are really interconnected with each other. So the next question then is, how do you manage your stress levels? And in order to answer that question, you need to basically understand two things. We talked just about the sympathetic nervous system and the fight and flight response. And now, in order to activate our relaxation system, we have to activate our so-called parasympathetic nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system is also known as the rest or digest or the growth and repair state, because that basically helps you to get back from that emotional brain into your rational brain. So it is really important that you know how to take care of yourself, how to practice self-care, how to get into a relaxed state. So the first question that I want you to ask yourself is the question, what do you need right now in this moment? What do you need? What can you do in order to take care of yourself? This is an extremely important question, so do consider this for a second. What do you need right now in order to take care of yourself? And the answer is super individual. There is no right or wrong, because we are all individuals and we are all human beings and we are all having a different human experience. And it is important that you are just taking care of yourself the way you feel best. The way that it feels best for you. So there are a couple of different things that I like to do in order to take care of myself and in order to manage my stress levels and my emotions. So I want to share a couple of different examples with you, just so you get a few different ideas of what you can do in order to manage your stress levels. First of all, it is also really important to say that when you are managing your stress levels, when you want to practice self-care, it is extremely important that you are completely disconnecting from that stress trigger or from the thought that you had that triggered the stress response, okay? So we are really talking about a complete cognitive disconnection, right? Mental disconnect. We need to make sure that you are focusing on something different than the topic that you have been kind of thinking and maybe ruminating about beforehand. So second of all, here are a couple of my personal favorites when it comes to managing my own stress levels. I really like to take a few deep breaths. Sometimes that's all I need in order to just collect myself. Because here's another really cool fact. It only takes 90 seconds in order to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. 90 seconds, so that's not a long time. And meditation and yoga have become so popular over the last couple of years because it really works. When you are in the fight or flight response, it means that you are obviously heightened and your muscles are more tense, your heart rate is higher, and your breathing is probably more shallow. So when you are taking a couple of deep breaths, you're basically signaling to your brain that everything is okay, that you are in a safe state and that you don't have to be afraid, right? It kind of sounds kind of cheesy, but that's really what's happening. So taking a few deep mindful breaths can be everything that you need in order to really manage your stress levels, and maybe just take a moment and pause and check in with yourself. Another thing that I love to do is to take my dog Kobe for a walk outside in nature, because it always helps me to disconnect and to stop worrying about the things that are happening oftentimes in my office, let's be honest, or maybe even with other people. Another thing that I really like to do is exercise. I love to do yoga, I love to do stretching, I love to go on bike rides or runs. I'm a super active person, so I really love to do that in order to fully disconnect, because sometimes it is not really easy to fully disconnect from your thoughts. So maybe sometimes you need a couple of different things and ways in order to do that. So that is a really helpful thing to do as well. Another thing that I really like to do is meditation, because sometimes I feel extremely tense or maybe even exhausted and tired, and meditation can really help me to fuel my energy levels. And it took me a really long time to get into meditation. There are two really cool YouTube videos on my channel that I highly encourage you to check out that I recorded last year for you. There's one about why I never thought I would start meditating and what really made the difference for me. And then I actually also recorded a meditation for you in order to get into a more relaxed state. So make sure that you're checking out all of these different videos and that content as well. And finally, another thing that I always talk about in my YouTube videos as well is journaling. I love to journal. Journaling really helps me to let go of all of the negative thoughts or maybe even the emotions that I have on my mind and that I'm feeling in my body. And it helps me to really go through my thought process, sort my thoughts, and let go of the things that are not serving me. So those are the things that I like to do, but again, you need to ask yourself the question, what do you like to do in order to recharge? What are things that are really helping you to fully disconnect from the things that just triggered your stress levels? So to wrap up today's video, if you want to regulate your emotions, you need to make sure that you're managing your stress levels and that you're practicing self-care in order to take care of yourself. I hope you found this video very informational. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below and let me know what thought or what idea resonated the most with you today. I hope to see you in one of my next videos, so thank you again for watching today's video and I hope to see you very soon.